Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that notwithstanding the standing orders, the motions on the Committee of Privileges report, recommendations in respect of Ms. Raisa Khan, and the Committee of Privileges report, recommendations in respect of Mr. Pritam Singh, Mr. Faisal Manap, and Ms. Sylvia Lim be taken together, and the debate on these motions and on any amendment proposed thereto be proceeded with simultaneously as though the debate were on a single motion. Mr. Speaker, both motions arise out of the report of the Committee of Privileges issued last week in respect of the complaint against Ms. Raisa Khan for untruth spoken in Parliament. The first motion deals with the committee's findings and recommendations in respect of the conduct of former Workers' Party MP Ms. Raisa Khan, which I had previously referred to the committee. The second motion deals with the committee's findings and recommendations in respect of the conduct of the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Pritam Singh, and Workers' Party MPs, Mr. Faisal Manap and Ms. Sylvia Lim, which arose in the course of the committee's inquiry. Given that both motions arise out of the same report, and further, given that the facts and matters pertaining to the motions are interlinked and the same set of evidence applies to both, I wish to move that the two motions be considered together and debated concurrently. A concurrent or simultaneous debate will allow members to address both motions in a single speech and enable the issues raised in the two motions to be considered holistically. It will also allow for more efficient conduct of parliamentary business. To be clear, and for avoidance of doubt, it is only the debate that is to be concurrent. The motions remain as two separate motions, and at the end of the debate, the votes on the two motions will be taken separately. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.
Question is, as moved by the Leader of the House, as many as of the opinion say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. The clerk will now proceed to read the notices of motion.
Item 1, a motion standing in the name of the Leader of the House on the Committee of Privileges report, recommendations in respect of Ms. Raisa Khan.
Leader.
Mr. Speaker, may I seek your permission to move both the motions standing in my name on today's order paper, one after another, and for my opening speech and reply at the end of the debate to range over both motions.
In view of the earlier decision of this House to have both motions taken together and the debate to proceed simultaneously on both motions, I will allow the motions to be so moved. Leader, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the first motion standing in my name on today's order paper, titled Committee of Privileges Report, Recommendations in Respect of Ms. Raisa Khan. I also beg to move the second motion standing in my name on today's order paper, titled Committee of Privileges Report, Recommendations in Respect of Mr. Pritam Singh, Mr. Faisal Manap, and Ms. Sylvia Lim. Sir, with your permission, can I ask for the distribution of the copies of the two motions that I have referred to? I thought that it might be more convenient for members to have copies so that they can refer to it as I'm speaking.
Please do.
And, sir, may I proceed as the copies of the two motions are being distributed?
Yes, please.
Mr. Speaker, on the face of it, the motions before us today require us to make certain decisions about the conduct of certain MPs. However, the motions are of a far deeper and greater significance. Fundamentally, the motions are about safeguarding the essence of democracy, our democracy, and preserving its most vital and essential characteristic, which is trust. They are about the need to ensure the integrity of our institutions and Parliament in particular, and about the confidence Singaporeans can have in their elected representatives. These things are not given. Established democracies like Australia and the United Kingdom have in recent months had to deal with allegations of senior parliamentarians being untruthful. The consequences are the erosion of public trust. Now, regrettably, we have to deal with our own situation of parliamentarians being untruthful. How we deal with this will reflect on our values and the standards of conduct to which we hold ourselves as MPs. How did we come to this point? Let me provide a quick recap. On 3rd August 2021, Ms. Khan spoke during the debate on the Workers' Party motion titled Empowering Women. She claimed that the police response to sexual assault survivors who lodged police reports was sometimes disheartening. She alleged that 3 years ago, she had accompanied a sexual assault survivor to make a police report against a rape that was committed against the survivor. She claimed to have witnessed the survivor come out crying. The police officer had allegedly made comments about her dressing and the fact that she had been drinking. Ms. Khan made that statement twice on 3rd August and repeated it during a later session on 4th October. However, on 1st November 2021, Ms. Khan confessed in Parliament that she had not in fact accompanied the survivor to the police station. I'll refer to this as the untruth. I raised a complaint under Standing Order 107B against Ms. Khan for breaches of privilege, and the matter was referred to the Committee of Privileges, the committee. The committee was duly convened and began its inquiry on 29 November 2021. The committee completed its work and presented its report to Parliament on 10 February 2022, making findings and recommendations in respect of Ms. Khan's conduct. However, in the course of its inquiry, the conduct of 3 senior members of the WP leadership also came into question. This led the committee to also make certain findings and recommendations relating to them as well. Before I go into the report, Mr. Speaker, let me say something about the privileges and immunities of Parliament and the corresponding duty that arises. One of the most powerful things about a parliamentary democracy is the ability to speak freely and candidly in Parliament. This is so that MPs can raise matters of public importance, safe in the knowledge that they have immunity from civil or criminal proceedings outside this House. That is a great privilege. In Singapore, this is enshrined in the Parliament Privileges, Immunities and Powers Act of 1962, the PPIPA. But because it is such an important privilege, it must also be used responsibly and must not be abused. This includes the need to be truthful on and to be able to substantiate matters said in Parliament or any committee of Parliament. The other aspect of parliamentary democracy is that MPs are expected to act honourably and to respect the processes of Parliament as an institution and not to act in a manner that would undermine it or the work of its committees. Thus, dishonourable conduct, abuse of privilege, and contempt of Parliament, including its committees, are offences under the PPIPA. Parliament is expected to keep its own house in order. Hence, the Act gives Parliament power to deal with such offences, ranging from a reprimand, suspension of privileges from Parliament, a fine, or even committal to prison and expulsion from Parliament. In addition, if the conduct constitutes an offence listed under Part 5 of the PPIPA, Parliament also has the power to refer the matter to the public prosecutor. Let me now deal with the findings and recommendations of the committee. First, in respect of Ms. Raisa Khan for abuse of privilege. In terms of liability, the case against Ms. Khan is clear and straightforward. She has admitted that she lied in Parliament twice on 3rd August 2021 and again on 4th October. The committee has therefore found that she acted with disregard for the dignity and decorum of the House and recommended that Parliament finds Ms. Khan guilty of abuse of privilege on all 3 occasions. And you will see that this is dealt with in para 2A of the first motion. The next issue then is what penalty she should receive for these abuses of privilege. Here, it's undisputed that when she lied on 3rd August, she was the only one who knew that what she said was untrue and therefore acted entirely of her own accord. Hence, she should bear the full and sole responsibility for those transgressions. The committee has accordingly recommended that a fine of $25,000, that's half the maximum penalty, be imposed on Ms. Khan for lying twice on 3rd August. And that is dealt with in paragraph 2B of the first motion. I turn now to the penalty for the lie that was repeated on 4th October 2021. And this is the issue that occupied the bulk of the committee's inquiry. Because by this time, she had disclosed the untruth to the leader of the opposition, Mr. Pritam Singh, and other two senior Workers' Party leaders, Ms. Sylvia Lim and Mr. Faisal Manap, who are the chairman and the vice chairman of the Workers' Party, respectively. So the issue is this. When Ms. Khan repeated the lie in Parliament on 4th October, was she acting of her own accord, or was she acting on the guidance of her senior party leaders? If she was acting on her own, then the penalty should be higher, because it means that she, and she alone, was responsible for deliberately repeating the lie despite being told otherwise, as claimed by Mr. Singh, showing a lack of remorse. But if, as a young and inexperienced MP, she was acting on the instructions or guidance of her party leaders, to whom she deferred and to whose views she gave weight, then that would be a mitigating factor, because then she is not the only one responsible. In this case, the penalty should be lower. And here, the accounts of Ms. Khan and the three senior WP leaders are diametrically opposed, so much so that, in fact, there can be no possibility of this being a case of differing interpretations or of any misunderstanding. It's a situation where either Ms. Khan lied to the committee or else Mr. Singh, Ms. Lim, and Mr. Faisal lied to the committee. There's no in-between. Ms. Khan's evidence is that when she repeated the lie on 4th October, it was her understanding, based on what Mr. Singh said to her on 3rd October, that there would be no consequences if she continued with the untruth. Mr. Singh, on the other hand, says that Ms. Khan did so on her own accord and contrary to instructions given. Ms. Lim and Mr. Faisal say that they did not discuss the issue with her. They left it to Mr. Singh. Two meetings are key to this issue. The meeting between Ms. Khan and the three senior WP leaders on 8th of August, the 8th August meeting, and the meeting between Mr. Singh and Ms. Khan on 3rd October 2021 at her home. That's the 3rd October meeting. Regarding the 8th August meeting, Ms. Khan's evidence was that the three senior WP leaders told her to continue with the untruth. There was no need for her to clarify the truth in Parliament, and Mr. Singh told her to take the information to the grave. The three WP leaders, on the other hand, say that there was simply no discussion on the matter after Ms. Khan confessed to them, or indeed for nearly 2 months, which passed thereafter. Instead, the discussion moved on to other matters. Next, the 3rd October meeting. This is of critical importance because it took place the evening before the Parliament sitting of 4th October, where Ms. Khan said the lie for the 3rd time. This meeting involved just Ms. Khan and Mr. Singh. No one else was present. The issue with regards to the 3rd October meeting was whether Mr. Singh had made it clear to Ms. Khan that she had to tell the truth, or Mr. Singh gave Ms. Khan a choice as to whether to tell the truth or keep to the untruth. And if he did give her such a choice, whether he pointed her in the direction of how that choice should be exercised. Ms. Khan's evidence is that the conversation was that if she were to retain the narrative, or if she were to continue the narrative, there would be no judgment. Her understanding of this was that, therefore, there would be no consequences if she continued with the lie. She was not instructed to tell the truth. Mr. Singh's evidence, on the other hand, was that he did not give Ms. Khan a choice and that he made it crystal clear that she had to tell the truth. Presented with such conflicting evidence, there is only one way to tell who is telling the truth, and that is to test it against objective evidence, which is what the committee did. They assessed it against the contemporaneous evidence, against written documents, against the conduct of the parties both before and after the relevant events, and they tested it against whether the evidence given to the committee made sense. Taking all these into account, the committee found that Ms. Khan was telling the truth and that Mr. Singh, and to a lesser extent Ms. Lim and Mr. Faisal, had lied to the committee. Immediately after the 8th August meeting, Ms. Khan sent a WhatsApp message to her assistants stating they've, meaning Mr. Singh, Ms. Lim, and Mr. Faisal, they've agreed that the best thing to do is to take the information to the grave. So there's written contemporaneous evidence immediately after the meeting. Her evidence was corroborated by Ms. Loh and Mr. Nathan. On the three WP's leaders' own evidence, between 8th August and 3rd October, nothing was discussed about clarifying the lie, but they all agreed that telling the untruth in Parliament was a serious matter and should be corrected. There was no correspondence or documents from them on the issue at all. They did not speak with Ms. Khan on the issue. While Mr. Singh claimed he was concerned with ensuring that Ms. Khan's family was told about the sexual assault before clarifying the untruth, not once did he or the others check if she had spoken with her parents. No steps were taken for any clarification to be made in Parliament ahead of the September-October sittings. The other WPCC members were kept in the dark. Mr. Singh established a disciplinary panel consisting of the very same people who knew that she lied, himself, Ms. Lim, and Mr. Faisal, and they did not disclose this to the CEC. All of these are consistent with a situation in which she was told to maintain the lie. As to the 3rd October meeting, the committee found that the evidence was quite clear that Mr. Singh strongly pointed Ms. Khan towards continuing with the untruth on 3rd October. They found as follows. On 3rd October, Mr. Singh visited Ms. Khan at her home specifically to advise her on what to say at the 4th October parliamentary sitting because he had a feeling that the topic might come up. He did not tell Ms. Lim or Mr. Faisal about the meeting. At this meeting, Mr. Singh did not tell Ms. Khan to proactively raise the matter or to tell the truth. This is not disputed, but this common position was only arrived at after inconsistencies in Mr. Singh's evidence was pointed out and he had changed his evidence. Mr. Singh initially said Ms. Khan had to proactively clarify the truth on 4th October, even if the issue did not come up. But when it was pointed out that no preparations had been made, there was no draft statements, for example, then he said no preparatory steps were taken because it was uncertain if Ms. Khan would have to clarify the truth. At this point, he realized his earlier evidence was untenable, and he changed his position and admitted that he did not tell Ms. Khan to come clean proactively on 4th October. He then said she should tell the truth if raised. But Mr. Singh's claim that he made clear on 3rd October that Ms. Khan should clarify the truth if raised is contradicted by the fact that no preparation whatsoever was made prior to 4th October to prepare for the truth to be told. Ms. Lim admitted, in the context of whether it would have been possible on 4th October to have Ms. Lim clarify the truth the next day on 5th October, that this was not possible because time was needed to carefully structure Ms. Khan's clarification and to make the necessary preparations. This is borne out by what happened after the decision was taken to come clean on 12 October, when the whole Workers' Party machinery swung into action. There were discussions on what the draft statement should look like. The drafts were personally vetted by Mr. Singh and shown to their CEC. Their activists and their social media teams were prepped, etc. On 4th October, as Minister Shanmugam was asking Ms. Khan in this chamber to confirm if the incident had really occurred as she had described, Ms. Khan texted Mr. Pritam Singh, she was sitting up there at that time, to ask, "What shall I do, Pritam?" If, as he claimed, he had been clear that if asked she should tell the truth, there would have been no need for her to text him for guidance. Further, if Mr. Singh's evidence was true, it would mean that when Ms. Khan lied again on 4th October, she would have flagrantly disobeyed his instruction of the previous day. So you would expect that in such situation, he would have immediately have demanded an explanation. Yet Mr. Singh did not speak to Ms. Khan for the rest of the day until close to midnight. And even then, there was no instruction to clarify the truth the following day on 5th October when Parliament was still sitting. Mr. Singh told Ms. Khan that he would not judge her. This makes no sense if he had told Ms. Khan to tell the truth, as there would be nothing to judge. However, it makes a lot of sense if he had told or encouraged her to continue the lie. Ms. Lowe's and Mr. Nathan's evidence contradict what Mr. Singh said. On 12 October, Mr. Singh told Ms. Lowe and Mr. Nathan that he had met Ms. Khan on 3rd October and told her, "I will not judge you." Both Ms. Lowe and Mr. Nathan understood this to mean that Mr. Singh had given Ms. Khan a choice as to whether or not to come clean, and that if she chose to repeat the untruth, she would not be judged. Mr. Singh claimed that he did not give Ms. Khan a choice as to whether to tell the truth, but this is contradicted by Ms. Lim's notes taken during the disciplinary panel, in which she recorded Mr. Singh as telling Ms. Khan that, "I told you it was your call." On 7th October, Ms. Khan had sent an email to Mr. Singh, Ms. Lim, and Mr. Faisal, seeking the advice on what to do because she had just received an email from the police requesting her assistance. In her email, she thanked the senior WP members for listening to me, for caring for me, and for guiding me throughout this without judgment. The committee found that if Mr. Singh had indeed told Ms. Khan on 3rd October to tell the truth, then after she lied again on 4th October, which would have been a breach of that instruction, she would not be thanking them for guiding her without judgment. And here the operative word is guiding. Implicit in her email is that she followed their guidance until then. The committee found that by telling Ms. Khan on 3rd October that there would be no judgment, Mr. Singh had left her with the view that if she were to continue with the untruth, there would be no judgment on her. The committee further found that taken together, the events of the 8th August and 3rd October meetings would essentially point Ms. Khan in one direction, which is to keep to the untruth if the issue was raised, with the assurance that Mr. Singh would not judge her if she did so. The committee therefore found Ms. Khan's culpability in respect of her repetition of the untruth on 4th October was mitigated by the following. The fact that she was a first-time MP who confessed to and sought guidance from her party leaders as to what to do. Regrettably, the guidance they gave in which she followed was to maintain the lie. Her conduct and evidence showed that she would have come clean if she had been advised to do so from 8th August. The committee also took into account that Ms. Khan's mental health had been unfairly and publicly attacked, in particular by Mr. Singh, and that Ms. Khan had resigned as a Member of Parliament. The committee had therefore recommended a lower fine of $10,000 in respect of the repetition of the untruth on 4th October 2021, and this is dealt with in paragraph 2C of the first motion. Mr. Speaker, sir, I turn now to the recommendations re Mr. Pritam Singh, Mr. Faisal, and Ms. Sylvia Lim. Based on the objective evidence before the committee made these findings: that all three senior WP leaders would have lied to the committee as to what was discussed at the 8th August meeting, and that they guided Ms. Khan to maintain the untruth she had told; that Mr. Singh lied about what had happened at the 3rd October meeting and essentially gave Ms. Khan to understand that it would be all right to maintain the untruth if the matter came up in Parliament the next day. In addition, Mr. Faisal refused to answer a question from the committee at least 8 times, despite being reminded that he had been called before the committee to assist with its investigations and that his refusal would amount to an offence and constitute a contempt of Parliament. The committee considered that Mr. Singh and Mr. Faisal's conduct could constitute a contempt of Parliament and offences under Part 5 of the PPIPA. And the committee was convened to look into the complaint against Ms. Khan. The committee noted that it was beyond its purview to recommend any penalty in respect of the 3 senior WP leaders for their conduct, which arose in the course of the inquiry. Parliament, however, has the power to consider what should be done and to take the appropriate action, and to assist Parliament in this task, the committee has made the following recommendations for our consideration. That while Parliament has the option to refer the 3 senior WP leaders to another committee of privileges, it is unlikely that another committee would make much progress in terms of uncovering more evidence, and that a distinction should be drawn between the conduct of Mr. Singh on the one hand and Ms. Lim and Mr. Faisal on the other, given their different roles and conduct. The committee notes Ms. Lim's and Mr. Faisal's roles were relatively subsidiary, while Mr. Singh appeared to have played the key and leading role in guiding Ms. Khan in respect of the untruth. The committee has therefore recommended that Parliament refer Mr. Singh's conduct to the public prosecutor with a view to considering whether to institute criminal proceedings. This is addressed in paragraph 2 of the second motion. Now, Mr. Speaker, some may wonder why Mr. Singh and Mr. Faisal should be referred to the public prosecutor and why this cannot be dealt with in-house by Parliament. Others may also wonder why it is the case that for Ms. Khan, who lied to Parliament, a fine is proposed, whereas in the case of Mr. Singh, who also lied, but to a committee of Parliament, he should be referred to the public prosecutor instead of just being fined like Ms. Khan. These are important questions, and I want to address them. So let me just explain a little bit about the PPIPA and how it works. Under the PPIPA, there are what I would term, and this is my term, general offences. The offences of dishonourable conduct, abuse of privilege, and contempt. These Parliament can and often would deal with it themselves. But there's also a certain category of offences which could be dishonourable conduct, you could classify them as contempt, but they're very specific under Part 5 of the PPIPA. These include lying to a committee in Parliament and refusing to answer questions, as well as refusing to produce documents. There are other offences listed under Part 5, but this special category, what is common about all of them and why they are also regarded as serious is that they essentially pervert or obstruct or prevent the processes of Parliament. Now, for the Part 5 offences, Parliament has the power to refer these to the PP. The PPIPA does not provide for other offences to be referred to the PP. It has to be under Part 5. And you could have an offence which is a Part 5 offence, but which Parliament may choose not to refer if it doesn't think it is that serious. So in this case, the committee found that all 3 lied. But it's only recommending to refer Mr. Singh to the PP, not Ms. Lim, nor Mr. Faisal Manap, because their roles were subsidiary and their lives were not as egregious. Then you may ask, okay, so what is the difference between what Mr. Singh's lie and Ms. Khan's? The seriousness of the conduct on the part of Mr. Singh is this. Ms. Khan lied to Parliament, and that's bad enough. But Mr. Singh, on the other hand, if what the committee found is correct, not only lied, but lied under oath. And not only that, but this was in proceedings before a select committee of Parliament conducting a formal inquiry and tasked with finding out the truth. And there's also the question of the consequences of a lie in this context, because it would, if believed, have had a bearing on the punishment to be meted out to Ms. Khan. The lies would have determined the fate of another MP who was being looked at before the Committee of Privileges. And that is a different order of seriousness altogether. That is a Part 5 offence under the PPIPA. And that is the reason why the committee had recommended referring Mr. Singh to the public prosecutor. The other thing is that it would mean that Ms. Khan was following his guidance when she lied on 4th of October, and that is also very serious. So, given the seriousness of the matter, it would be the fairest course of action to all concerned to refer it to the PP. The PP will have the opportunity to consider all evidence afresh, including new evidence, in deciding whether or not to prefer criminal charges against Mr. Singh. It would also give Mr. Singh the opportunity to defend and vindicate himself with legal counsel if criminal charges are brought. And fourth, the matter would be adjudicated by the courts, which are independent. In the case of Mr. Faisal, his refusal to produce documents or answer questions can also amount to an offence under the PPIPA, and that is a Part 5 offence. So the committee has recommended that he also be referred to the public prosecutor, and this is addressed in paragraph 2 of the second motion. Apart from the offences to be referred to the public prosecutor, there remain the following potential offences under the PPIPA that need to be dealt with by Parliament: dishonourable conduct and contempt of Parliament on the part of Mr. Singh for lying to the committee and for his role in guiding Ms. Khan to lie to Parliament. The committee has recommended that Parliament defer any action on this until the criminal proceedings, if any, are completed. And this is dealt with in paragraph 3.1 of the second motion. Then there's dishonourable conduct and contempt of Parliament on the part of Ms. Lim and Mr. Faisal for lying about the 8th August meeting and for their initial concurrence in the guidance to maintain the lie by agreeing that it should be taken to the grave. Likewise, the committee has recommended that any decision on this be deferred until the outcome of the referral of Mr. Singh's conduct to the public prosecutor. And this is dealt with in paragraphs 3.1 and 3.2 of the second motion. So in conclusion, the conduct of Mr. Singh and Mr. Faisal will be considered by the public prosecutor under the criminal justice process. Parliament will only consider the remaining issues, if any, after the criminal justice process has taken its course, by which time we will have the benefit of what emerges from that process. It is the fairest way forward for all. Mr. Speaker, the recommendations made by the committee are sound and balanced given the circumstances. I would ask members to accept them and to support the motions, as I do, so as to uphold public trust in Parliament and in our democracy. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.